humbled to be standing in front of you to share my experience in product management, specifically related to product planning and roadmap planning. But before we get that, I wanted to thank Nicholas for the warm introduction. Even though I don't speak a word of Spanish, it sounded really cool. I agree with whatever he said. All right. So the main topic for today's discussion is around the framework that we use at Spotahome on how we prioritize initiatives, how we do the roadmap planning, and our product planning. But before I jump into the topic, I want to share with you a few things just to give you some context on what this topic is about. On first of all, like what Spotahome is about. Hopefully this works. All right, so I want to give some context on what Spotahome is about, and then why we chose this topic, and some background about what Livelog means. How is it different from a backlog? Right. First about Spotahome, a quick intro. The easiest way to describe Spotahome is we make residential rentals easy for customers. We strive to be the easiest platform where customers can rent their properties using their mobile phone. What that means is we run an online marketplace connecting tenants that are looking for mid to long-term properties. That is anywhere from 3 to 12 months plus on the one side, and then the landlords who offer those properties, and we make the connection. The cool thing is we provide all the transactions online, saving both the customers, our tenants, and the landlords both time and money. So that's a quick intro about Spotahome. We started off out of Madrid. We have about 300 people here in Madrid, but we are also building a hub in London, where I'm based out of. So we currently operate in 7 different countries and 10 different cities, and we plan to expand, as the business grows. That's a quick intro about Spotahome. Let me quickly jump into why we chose this topic related to product planning or roadmap planning. When Nicholas first approached me about this opportunity, like any product manager would ask, I asked him, hey, what would your customers want to hear about? What would your customers care about? And by customers, I meant you, the audience. And like any great product manager would do, he has the pulse of his customers. He quickly rattled off the few topics that would interest the customers the most, and I chose the one closely related to product planning. Here's why. Because like in any tech startup, we have grand ambitions. We want to expand everywhere. We have like global ambitions. And we have this grandiose vision of what we want to achieve. But in reality, we have a limited set of resources. We have a limited set of people that are going to help us achieve our vision. And if you count the number of engineers, it's even like fewer. It's very hard to hire engineers. So that means as product managers, we have to be really, really frugal. We have to be extremely careful on what initiatives that we pick and what initiatives get implemented and then iterated upon. Right? So it is not an easy thing to do. It is very challenging to do. I've been in this in the digital industry for the last 20 years, working for like multiple companies. Working for the longest time at Amazon for like 7 years back in Seattle, and then 2 years with HelloFresh in Berlin, and then I moved to London for Spotahome. Right? It's a challenging thing to do, but of course, if it were easy, everyone would do it. That's why we have product lovers all over here, right? The second thing is, what does a product Livelog mean? How is it different from a backlog? Right? So again, I want to share with you a personal story of mine. This was from probably 18 to 20 years ago when I started my career as an engineer back in Houston, Texas. And in those days, product management function was probably very much in its infancy, or it did not exist at all. So we engineers used to directly work with customers or users and then develop the product. And whenever somebody inside the company came up with an idea or an initiative, we engineers, our favorite response was, hey, throw it in the backlog. We will get to it in due course. But sadly, in reality, nothing much came out of it. We continued to work with whatever we thought were priorities, and everybody forgot about whatever went into this backlog. So then fast forward a few years after I switched to product management, so we were looking for a concept, an idea, or a name that would send a strong signal, not just to the product teams and engineering teams, but to across the company, that this repository of ideas that we collect from different stakeholders across the company, what we used to call as backlog, is actually a living and breathing document. It's, the ideas in it, they are like kicking, they are thriving, they are mutating all the time. And somebody suggested, hey, why not call it a Livelog? And people at first, they were like a little bit curious. Hey, what does a Livelog mean? And then once we started explaining, they got the concept. And slowly, they embraced this concept. And suddenly, not just the product teams or engineering teams, it's the rest of the company. They were curious, and then they wanted to learn more about this concept. And they wanted to participate in the product planning process. So I will get to that in a second. So now, along the same lines, I wanted to share with you 3 main things. Number one is at Spotahome, the framework that we use to structure and prioritize, assess, both quantitatively and qualitatively, the many ideas that we have in our Livelog. And so how do teams get to pick what they want to work on and then move from there? Number 2 is how do we source the best ideas and from the rest of the company? As product managers, you have great ideas, you have like great game-changing initiatives, but there is also an opportunity for us to tap into the collective intelligence in the rest of the company and extract the best ideas from them, so that at the end of the day, customers, they don't care who came up with the idea. All they care about is, hey, did you solve my problem? Did you make my life easier? That's what they care about. So this is a very collaborative effort. It's not just a product manager's job or an engineer's job or a designer's job to come up with the ideas. It's the entire company that should take ownership of this and contribute to the initiatives so that we can maximize the impact on customers as well as the company. The last thing I want to share about is a real-life example from Spotahome. We will go through a sample initiative that was launched early this year. In fact, the product manager who launched is sitting somewhere over there. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Using this framework, how was this prioritized, and then how did we follow the framework? But before I jump into the solution, I wanted to start off with the problem statement, right? So what is the set of problems that we want to address by coming up with this framework or the solution, right? This is a collection of anecdotes I've collected from the last 20 years of experience from different companies, different domains, from different stakeholders, some of them from my own personal experience. So let's look at them. The first one is, ideas are presented as solutions. I heard a couple of speakers in the morning. They were talking about the same problems that they have in their companies. This is an ongoing issue across many different companies. Whenever you get an idea from stakeholders in your company, it will be presented as a solution. Hey, can you implement this pop-up that has a blue background and orange button? Nobody knows what the context behind is, or what's the benefit for customers is, or why do we even need this pop-up, right? The second one is, this is from a stakeholder perspective. It's not clear what the teams are working on. I think Javier from OnTrack was also mentioning a similar point, that there is the level of understanding between the product and engineering and the rest of the company, it's like totally different, right? So it's hard for stakeholders to understand why a certain initiative was picked and then why the team is working on it. So they start to think, hey, I don't believe this is the right initiative because there is nothing in it for my team. Third, this is from a product manager perspective. It's challenging to stack rank. There are so many things that my teams or squads could be working on, but how do I pick the best ones? On top of that, when requests come in, people say, hey, here are the 10 things that I want you to execute. By the way, all are equally important, and they should have been delivered yesterday, right? That's the pressure that product managers, they operate under. The fourth one is my favorite one. It's hard to say no when ideas come from the top. I can shamelessly admit that I'm also a perpetrator of this crime or mistake. My team can attest to that. But this has been, I've been trying to minimize it, and it's declining, I can tell you. But product managers, it could be frustrating. Hey, no matter what we prioritize, we end up working on something the leadership wanted. And the last thing is, let's imagine I'm a customer service associate. I'm dealing with customers every day, but I don't know a mechanism or framework where I can contribute to the product roadmap. So here's the set of problems that we wanted to address by coming up with a framework that would help us prioritize initiatives at Spotahome. Now, again, before we jump into the solution or framework, I want to walk you through some of the guiding principles we follow. Number one is the priorities are decided by business cases, not by whoever came up with the idea, not by who came up with the idea. Now, where do we use these guiding principles? These are tenets, or principles that we follow that we help us make tough decisions. Whenever there is a tug of war between two different stakeholders, we use these guiding principles to break the tie. The second one is I'm a firm believer of this principle. Best ideas come from people that are closest to the problem. Right? What this means is it could be a product manager, or it could be an engineer, or somebody working on the customer service team. They are always thinking about customers, they are interacting with customers, and they have the best solutions for problems. Right? Not somebody who is 1 level, 2 level, 3 levels away from the problem. Number 3 is priorities are not set in stone. New data points emerge, and then priorities may change. Again, for both product managers and stakeholders, this could be very, very unsettling. Hey, we just decided on the priorities probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now why are we changing the priorities? Let's continue to execute on whatever we decided. We spend so much time prioritizing. But in reality, it doesn't work that way. Because in a fast-paced industry, things are always changing. New data points emerge, new competitor insights you learn about, or you learn new things about your customers as you progress through the quarter over the year. So that means as a product manager and a stakeholder, we should be open to be flexible and adaptable in changing our priorities, assessing what the new ideas that come in, and then let it go through the framework, and then figure out, hey, quantitatively, does this make sense to deprioritize what I am working on currently, and then jump into this new initiative. Because at the end of the day, customers, they don't care about what you decided 6 weeks ago based on old data. They want, if you don't provide solutions for their problems, they are going to go to their competitors, to our competitors. Fourth one is it's okay to disappoint customers as well as internal stakeholders by saying no. This is an area where I struggled a lot in my initial years as product manager, because the stakeholders, you see them every day in the hallway, you go out to lunch with them, you hang out with them, but it's very hard to say no. You don't want to disappoint them. Same thing with customers. We want to be everything for everybody. In the end, we disappoint like everyone. So if you look at the range of customers that use your product, there could be several segments of customers. Some could be like light users, others could be like average users, others could be like heavy hitters. And their motivations, their needs, their wants, they all are different. They all want like different things from your product. They all have different problems. But as a product manager, what do you focus on, right? So you have to say no to certain customers. In this case, let's say light and average customers, and focus on the heavy hitters that are going to move the needle for your business. Same thing with internal stakeholders. Sometimes it just so happened, our sales team will come running and say, hey, this is the next big thing for customers. This is what my customers want. And then when you dig in, it will impact probably like 2 customers, right? So that's not going to move anybody's needle. So you have to have the backbone to say no by listening to the problem that you want to solve, by quantitatively assessing it, and then saying no. The last one is one of my favorites. If you don't agree with the priorities, disagree and commit. What does this mean? Despite all the number crunching, you have put together business cases, you have created a rationale for why this should be the priority order. There will be people in the company, and they have their own set of priorities that may not agree with whatever you came up with, whatever the teams came up with, for the right set of reasons. But what I suggest is, collaboration is key. We have to make decisions by collaboration, but it doesn't have to be through consensus. We don't have to wait for the entire company to believe, this is the right set of priorities, because, like I mentioned before, the customers are not going to wait. So at some point, as a product manager, you have to put your foot down and then say, hey, here's the reason why this is the priority, here's the rationale and data to back it up, and we are going ahead. The ship is going to sail, right? Now, all right, so before I jump into the solution, I promise the next slide will be the framework. I'm making certain assumptions about you and your company. Number one is I'm assuming it is clear to you and everyone in the company who the target customer is, what problems and frustrations you're solving for your customers, and what's the value proposition for them. And what are the key metrics that matter to you and your company? And finally, the goals. That's clear to the entire company so that they all know which direction to run, as well as how fast they need to run. So I'm assuming this is clear to everyone in your company. Now let's jump into the solution. All right. The solution is very, it's a lightweight framework. It's a set of 5 questions we ask anyone in the company, whoever has an idea. It is very simple, transparent. It is inclusive because we take ideas from anyone and everyone in the company, not just product managers or engineers. They come up with the ideas. And it is based on quantitative data or qualitative data. And we assess based on the impact that this initiative is going to have on customers and the company. And it is open for everyone at any time. They can input their initiatives into this Google Sheet that we have. This could be any product planning tool that you currently use, but in our case, we want to keep it simple, and we have started off with a Google Sheet that is exposed to the entire company with 5 simple questions. Let's assume you are in marketing, or you are a customer service associate, and you have an idea about a customer problem. The first question we ask is, hey, what is the problem we want to solve here? This is very key because we want them to write down. We want them to provide their inputs into the spreadsheet, under the relevant column, saying, hey, what is the problem we want to solve for customers? This puts a pause on whoever is coming up with ideas, and this will prevent them from suggesting or sending you just the solution. So we are forcing them to talk about problems we want to solve, right? And then we ask, who's the customer? Very simple question. Is it the customer that is paying for your product or service? Or is it the customer, an internal customer that could be your marketing stakeholder or finance or customer service? Like, who is the customer here? Let's be clear on that. And the third is, how do we know it's a problem? Like, what gave you the belief or the conviction that this is a problem for customers? What is the source that you are basing your judgment on or your opinion on? There could be a variety of sources. Number one is it could be a customer survey, it could be focus group, it could be a user research study, or it could be customers' behavior, how they are behaving with your product, how they are interacting with your product. Or it could be data from the customer service team, because they are talking to customers every day and they have like rich insights. So it could be any number of sources, but we ask them, how do we know it's a problem? Like, state the source. Because based on the data points from the sources, they're all going to flow into the next question, which is, how big is the opportunity? This is where the crux of the business case comes together. When we say how big is the opportunity, you estimate in terms of the metrics that are important to you and your company. In some cases, it could be the top-line revenue. That means, you frame the opportunity in terms of, hey, if we were to do this, this is the expected impact on revenue. This is how big the impact is. We estimate it based on the assumptions X, Y, Z, or ABC, whatever that is. Finally, the last thing we ask, this is optional, and I'll get to it, why it's optional. This is, what is the proposed solution? Because you are good in coming up with identifying problems, but you may not know what the solution is. It's totally fine. Or you may have a solution, and then we make it clear, hey, this is your proposed solution. Keep in mind that this is not the solution that may get implemented if this initiative were to be picked up. Because the product managers and engineers and the teams, they typically come up with quicker ways of solving the same problem, because they are very, very close to the details, right? So we ask them, what is the proposed solution and what's your hypothesis? It's very simple. So now let's jump into the real-life example of an initiative that was launched earlier this year that had a good impact on customers. Let's go through the 5-question, the framework. Number one is, what is the problem? Again, to give some context on how Spotahome works, assume you're a random user, you land on the site or on the app, you choose the city where you want to rent your property, and then you're going to search. Hey, I want to. Here's my criteria. I'm going to search, and there is a bunch of search results. Then you start filtering down. You start narrowing down to your desired list of, let's say, 2 or 3 properties, and then you're going to compare. Right? That's how normally users on our platform, they behave. But the problem is, as you know, in real estate, 2 things are really, really key. Number one is location. Number 2 is price. Of course, we provide like many different attributes to filter, but customers, they were looking for ways to filter by their favorite neighborhoods or points of interest. And they were abandoning the search because they couldn't find it. There's a huge list of properties, like how am I going to filter based on where I want to live? I'm clear about the neighborhoods I'm myself and my family is going to live, but there's not an easy way for me to filter it, right? And in this case, it's clear. It's the tenants that are the customers. How do we know it's a problem? There's a variety of sources you can use to figure out. First is, let's say using the heat map or the Hotjar recordings, you can see customers are searching, and then they are going up and down the filter options page, but then they are not doing anything. They are like abandoning. So they're bouncing off. So that's one source. Second is knowing that you can invite customers to your office. You can show them your product, your prototype, and then let them play with it, and then see in real life how they actually search. And then you get insights from them, and then you learn that X% of customers, actually they said the lack of this feature made them abandon the search, right? So that's another data point for you. Third is knowing that you can quickly launch a smoke test or a fake test on the site by providing a button that says, hey, click here to filter by neighborhood. Depending on how many customers they click, you can quickly assess what the expected adoption rate for that feature would be. So now you have a variety of data sources. You triangulate, and then you feed into the next question to come up with the answer, with an answer for the question, how big is this opportunity? Like I said before, we operate in like 10 different cities, 7 countries. So if we were to launch this across all the cities, then this is the expected impact on the number of transactions. In our case, the number of booking requests that customers complete. So you put together the business case, you line up against all the initiatives. Finally, it's the solution. I'm just going to go over this pretty quickly. The solution is very simple. You take the prominent neighborhoods in each of the cities, and then you show it as filter option, and then let customers filter by those options. Now, this is how the Livelog looks at in practice. It's a simple Google Sheet with those 5 questions. Hey, what's the problem? Who is the customer? How do we know it's a problem? How big is the opportunity? And what is the proposed solution? And you have one line item for every initiative. Now, the team has a rich set of initiatives to choose from, and they look at the expected impact and then decide what initiatives they are going to work on. That's going to maximize the impact on customers. Now, there are a few things we need to watch out for. This could be something, a new framework or a variation of the framework you're already following in your company. Number one is not everyone knows how to build a business case. Fair enough. This is not expected across all functions. Product managers, they are really good in putting together business cases. But if you were to ask a customer service associate, it's not their skill set. First of all, they may not have access to data, and even if they had, they may not know how to crunch numbers and come up with the insights or put together a business case. It's totally fine. Let them work with the product manager, and it's the product manager's job to teach them or to do the business case for them. The second pushback could be, this is both from your product management function as well as from stakeholders. Hey, why should we change? Inertia, whenever you introduce change, there is always some pushback because you have to overcome inertia, and then you have to do things a new way. But my approach is always, hey, if we don't experiment, if we don't try out new ways, then we may not improve. So let's try out. Third is collaboration takes time. This is true both for stakeholders as well as for product managers. As it is, I remember from the on-track presentation earlier today. Javier mentioned product managers. They are the most hardworking. They are very stressed out. And again, on top of that, we are asking them to collaborate with different stakeholders. It's going to take more time, but in the end, it's the best thing that we can do for our customers. Because, like I mentioned before, it doesn't matter to customers who came up with the idea. We have a diverse group of individuals across different functions. They all think differently, and they come up with the best ideas and solutions. So it is really critical that we collaborate with our stakeholders. And in the process of collaboration, we also get their buy-in. So now the teams are going to think, hey, this is not just the product manager came up with the idea. It's me. It's my team that has contributed to this. And I have a big role in shaping this idea. So right off the bat, you have gotten their buy-in. Last thing is, one of the guiding principles we looked at before. I don't agree with the priorities. Again, my answer is, hey, it is okay. Here's the rationale why we pick certain initiatives to work on, and we are not going to wait for everyone to fall into the bandwagon. The ship is going to sail. All right. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll take questions.
Thank you. Love the talk. What's the next step? How do you budget and resource for the initiatives?
How do we budget? So it's totally. It starts with the goals. Again, every quarter we come up with OKRs. Hey, what is the number one metric for the company, and what is the number we should strive to achieve, and it's going to cascade down from that. So at a high level, let's assume your number one metric is revenue, right? So you can break it down into number of customers times revenue per customer, right? And number of customers could be new customers plus the existing customers, and then you can break it down. So you can create like a KPI tree. So to answer your question directly, it's going to start with the top line number or whatever the main KPI that you want to achieve, and then you look at the initiatives that are going to support in you achieving those objectives. Did that answer your question? Yeah. So this is something we are still tinkering with. From my experience in the past, what has worked is let's assume there is team A that is owning a certain domain, and one of the quarters, whatever that team is working on is not going to move the needle for what we want to do. So that means that team is going to take on like new objectives, like they are going to venture into like new domains. So it's more like a pod structure. We try to move resources based on wherever the need is that would help us achieve our objectives. But this is something that also creates stress for both product managers and engineers because it's not easy to change context. But this is something we are experimenting with. Yeah.
Okay. Hello. Thank you for your presentation. It was great. I have a question about the actual the spreadsheet. Well, two actually. It's like all answers are open. Like there's no guide on how to answer. Because I just said not everybody knows how to answer that.
Yeah. So we have like a sample initiative right on top. Hey, here's how you answer like each question, and then to serve as guidelines. Now, anyone whoever has an idea, if they don't know how to fill in, they can directly reach out to any of the product managers and then get guidance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I was about to say, this is the downside of using the spreadsheet. So I'm actually looking for a product planning tool, that would solve this. Maybe it's a question for some of the entrepreneurs.
For these kind of things, I use something called Coda, which is fairly similar.
Okay.
And the other question is, how do you encourage collaboration when somebody puts an idea there? If there's any kind of like loop where people jump in and suggest, and I mean, do you actively encourage that?
Yeah.
Like, how does it work?
So some of the other columns in the spreadsheet, which I did not show, are hey, who's the person that suggested this idea? And then who is the squad or team that you think should be working on? So that means, now you have like the stakeholder as well as the PM for that team. So now they have to get together, they have to collaborate, and then figure out, hey, is this the best idea? And is this are the assumptions stated in the business case, they are right? And then they pass the test.
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So one of the questions is how big is the opportunity, which is a little subjective, really. But you did also talk about how some of these problems could be either external for your customers or maybe internal as well. Maybe you've got some internal tools for tracking, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't you think that maybe this methodology could starve the internal ones? Because obviously the impact is not going to be as big.
Yeah, so great question. This is a tussle always between, hey, should we focus on external customers or internal customers? I will give you a real life example from Spotahome. Because we have customers talking to, we have customer service agents talking to customers. Now customers, they come to our site and then they send a booking request saying, hey, I want to book this property. And then the landlord takes an action saying, yeah, I approve or I reject because for whatever reason, I don't like this tenant or I don't like the conditions, I'm not going to approve. Let's assume for an example. Then the customer service agent is going to jump in and then offer, hey, I'm sorry, your booking request got rejected, but here's the list of alternatives that I can present to you. Here's the list of other properties that matched your original property. Now you can book from this. Now, if you think about it, you can develop a tool for the customer service agent to make them more productive, or you can offer this as a feature for the customers that just got rejected. Right? Now the answer is like very clear. Should you invest in your internal customers or should you invest in external customers? Because the root of the problem lies with the external customers. So we decided to invest on the external customers. Did that answer your question?
Well, sometimes the problems are really something for the. Imagine if it was the ticket tracking system that the customer service agent was using, and it automatically allows them to, let's say, create those answers in whatever way they want.
Sure.
Something that's not going to affect the user.
Yeah. Now again, you
really
have to
need a corporate sponsor in order to get them to have their ideas.
absolutely. You have to ask yourself, hey, is the primary metric I care about, is it, let's say, if it is the top line growth, it is the revenue, and I'm not going to worry about the cost, but about the unit economics for this quarter or for the next 2 quarters, then it makes sense to invest on external customers, right? If your concern is more about, hey, how do we become like more profitable, cut down cost, that means, improving agents' productivity is one of the levers that you can use. So in that case, you shift your priorities and then say, hey, we are going to make our agents more productive, or we don't need these many agents, and I'm going to invest in this area. So again, it starts with, what is your objective for the quarter or for the next 2 quarters?
¿Alguna pregunta más?
Okay. Big round of
All right.
applause
Thank you very much,
for
guys.
Balaji. Thank you so much.